have the floor.
Thank you. And thank you for all for coming tonight. I have to drastically revise my 60-minute speech. So thank you for doing that, because most of the things I wanted to talk about, you brought forward in a very eloquent way. My purpose tonight is to do two things. One is to submit some signatures on a petition, and two, to obtain a commitment from you. More about that later. I was before you several years ago. I made a presentation on behalf of the library talking about what makes Glenwood City a good place to live. Some of you were on the board at that time. And during the discussion, several words kept coming back. Things like governance, natural resources, economic factors, city services, and not in the least is the people. Well, I want to talk about some of the words that are associated with that word, governance. In other words, the process of governing. Okay? And the words that surface there, a couple of them really ring true for this situation here. It's called a shared vision. All right? For a community to have a viable future, there needs to be a shared vision. And there's a process by which you go about achieving that vision. But what I'm seeing is this. There are shared vision differences. Some of the shared vision is with a mind, or maybe even more than one mind. Or there's a vision, shared vision by many other people that say, we would not rather have a mine within that close to the city. At this time, I'm submitting the signatures that we collected. According to the notes here, there are 335 Glenwood City voters that signed this petition, and 145 local citizens for a total of 480. And the petition basically says a request for a community referendum on the annexation of the Teigen Crosby property into Glenwood City for the purpose of creating a sand mine. So at this time, I'd like the record to reflect the fact that now I've delivered those signatures to the clerk. So what is the message here from these signatures? Well, it's been said here several times. We want to be involved. One of the fundamental ways of getting involved is through the ballot box. So in this case, we're talking about a process that would involve a referendum. From my perspective, being in the community since 1984, as your school administrator, I see the perils of not involving people in the process as being very detrimental to the community. Whether we have a mine or don't have a mine, you know, something, our future will arrive. But if people are shut out of the process, there's going to be some resentment, some lingering resentment. That's not good for this community. Whether you're on one side or the other, that is not good for the community. So tonight, this is what I'm asking from the City Council. I'm asking for a commitment from the City Council to include an action item on the next special or regular meeting agenda to answer the question, shall there be a referendum on land annexation petition intended for an industrial sand mine? That is what the main reason why I'm here tonight. What are your thoughts about that? A commitment to make an agenda item just for you to consider whether or not you want to have a referendum. What I'm asking from you tonight is that guarantee that you'll at least have something on the agenda at the next regular meeting or next special meeting, whatever it happens to be, that addresses the question, shall we have a referendum on the annexation? What are your thoughts about that?
I'm in favor of that personally. I think it's a good idea. I agree that it can be perilous, and I have talked to both sides as a council member, those that are very much for the mine and those that have a lot of reservations. Personally, I think it's a very big issue, and I obviously understand we are a democratic republic, not a straight democracy, and you want to avoid chaos. So you have representatives that vote for you. But in this instance, I think that it would help us, like you say, avoid the perils. I don't know how anybody else feels. and would avoid some chaos if we actually did have a vote on it and took it into consideration. That's my feelings, but I don't know how
Thank you.
anyone else feels.
It-
And I appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
Terry, thoughts?
I think that's, needs to be discussed by the council as a group.
Scott?
First, we'd wait for Sherry to check into the signatures, of course,
Well,
and then we'd make that as a decision as a council.
okay, this is just, these signatures are
Just
just,
referendum.
right, these signatures are just a message about wanting to be involved, Scott, okay? It's, from a standpoint of maybe a legal binding, it's not, in the sense that I know. This would be an advisory referendum, okay? All I'm looking for tonight is a commitment from this board to say, yeah, we will consider the possibility of a referendum if we have a petition for annexation. And this is not about frac sand mining. People that I talked to when I collected some of these signatures, they were pretty much pro for the mine, as somebody indicated here. This was all about, yes, I would just like to be involved, and I'd like to have a say-so about this issue that's huge for us for the next maybe 20, 30 years.
So on the ordinance itself, yes, it would be publicized, and then we would take consideration of people's opinion, yeah. And that's what we do.
So, in other
That's
words,
not the same.
in other words,
Excuse me, you guys were voted before this issue. You were voted into office.
You know,
before
Julia's
this-
got the floor.
please, okay?
Boy,
I understand.
You gotta earn a little
Okay.
more respect to people
Okay.
talking.
Really, what is a commitment to have an item on the agenda at some future meeting that you would consider putting the annexation question, if it comes to pass, to a referendum. It would be non-binding. It would just give you some legitimate and reliable information about where the people are on this issue. Ben? Nancy?
I understand what you're saying, Julian, and I understand your concern. Annexation has never, ever been discussed by this council.
Right.
We have never even thought about it as a council. And I personally don't care for the pot stirring that's going on. I mean, it's like you are wanting this to be a devastating situation for the community when we have never even talked about it as a council. I understand what you're saying, and I know your concern, but as a council member, I do not want to, I don't want to be pigeonholed into something which we have never talked about. And I don't know how to say that eloquently,
Okay.
maybe not making any sense to you, but as a council member, I resent not doing the job, not researching, not learning everything I can about this, but being forced to discuss something that as a council, we have not gone through the proper channels to do.
And I think I understand what you're saying. So all I'm saying is at this point, that if there is an annexation petition submitted for you to consider, okay, that may be totally questionable. Now, I really don't know. What I'm saying is that from my perspective, I believe it would be in your best interest as a council to have a opportunity for people to get involved through a referendum process to give you the kind of information and guidance that you need, that Scott referred to, about the possibility of annexation. Okay?
I might be saying something that I shouldn't be, that is totally not even relevant to what you're asking, but my research on this is this. The only people who can sign a petition and who can actually vote on annexation are those who are being annexed. I mean, I understand the referendum of those not wanting the mine. This is what this is about. It's not about annexation, it's about the mine. I get that. But I think we're talking about a lot of different issues here. And why don't you just say, okay, we don't want the mine, so let's channel it through the annexation. You know, I just, you're causing a lot of pot stirring. I don't know what to say that. And I'm not trying to be difficult.
I understand.
I'm
Okay.
just trying to very clearly explain how I feel.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I think people have a right to say what they want. I think they have a right, it's their community. If they don't want the mine, so be it. That's truly their deal. It's good for them. But I don't want to be put in that situation where we're being forced to discuss something which is not even, we haven't even talked about yet.
Okay.
And so I'm saying, yeah, if people don't want it, great, that's their right. But some people do want it, and that's their right too.
And you believe, I believe, and I know that for a fact, that some of the people that signed this petition are for it, like I said before. Okay, this isn't about the frac sand mine, it's about being involved in the process. Okay. We are trying to work with the given structure of the statutes and rules and things of city government. Okay. There are certain things that need to be done. Well, part of that process can happen fairly rapidly. From my perspective, it is, I think, an important thing for you to be able to have some strategies to deal with those timelines that give you the kind of input that you need.
Well, I think the best strategy is to research, to have the science behind it, and not make generalizations or just get carried away on things which aren't even true.
And I am not making those generalizations tonight, Nancy. I have not. I'm talking about a message with these signatures in it. And that is, they want some involvement in the process of the decision making, okay?
If I'd consider it.
Okay.
Meaning what?
If there would be an annexation request, I would consider the council deciding whether or not to hold a referendum, non-binding.
Okay? Would that mean that you would consider, in other words, you would put it as an agenda item?
To consider. It's not a big issue to put it as an agenda item.
From my perspective, no, it's just an opportunity to find out how the process is going to unfold at your
The
level.
only thing that bothers me a little bit is, this is a very big issue and I understand that. I've been dealing with this longer than most of the people in this room have, because of where my daughter lives, okay? Start with that. At what items, what other items are people going to want? How small items or groups are going to want a referendum vote?
I understand.
And we are leading up. And you know, of course, from working at the school all those years, referendum votes didn't mean a hell of a lot out there. And excuse me for the word, I have trouble with.
But the very fact that they have them is an
The
indication.
schools.
Okay, I'm sorry. go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I have to quit talking.
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
Okay,
Well, you haven't been feeling well lately,
No.
so.
okay. So, from what I'm hearing is that I can't get a commitment as a council to have an agenda item at some future date regarding the possibility of a referendum if you receive a petition. Is that a fair statement about what's going on?
Could you repeat that again?
What I'm hearing from the council is there's not a commitment from the council as a body to an action item on some future agenda, a future meeting that would address the possibility of having a referendum, or shall we have a referendum on an annexation if it's received, a petition?
Well, without discussing it as a council, right now, we can't answer that.
One of the-
You're asking individually, you know, as a council, without discussing it, it's hard to give you
Understand.
an answer, you know. You asked individually, we gave you our answer, okay? Now we've got to go and discuss it as a council.
Okay?
I think this council has always done what we felt best for our community. Maybe everybody doesn't agree with that, but I know we've always tried to do what's best for the majority of the people in this community. That's why we were elected here. And I think we have a decent track record from the past that we have. And, you know, to be put on the spot, you know, right now, you know, and I agree with what was spoken earlier, we want to get an ordinance done. It's not the first ordinance we've ever had a lot of time put into. You know, that's the first step. I know everybody's here thinking they're going to petition to be annexed in. but they haven't. We haven't even got done with our ordinance. And how many months have we worked on that? And we have to have an ordinance. The ordinance that's in our book is a paragraph long. The new one proposed so far is 22 pages.
And rightfully so, based on the complexity.
Right, we want to do it right. And yes, we spent some lawyer money on it to do it right. And it's not just been the council people, it's been other community people that are on them other boards.
All right, I'm going to conclude with just saying that there's a shared vision that makes the community strong, okay? There may be differences in some regards, but when major issues affect that shared vision, I believe you need to have that input from the people before you make a decision that has this kind of scope and magnitude. Thank you.
I certainly don't have any problem discussing anything.
The consideration of having, just a discussion of having whether we would have a non-binding referendum prior to any annexation. Could we put that on the next meeting's agenda or no? What does everybody think?
Why not?
Well, you can request to put it on the agenda.
I'm requesting
Right.
to put it on the agenda.
I don't know.
I'll request to put on the agenda then. I'm sorry, I'm not that well versed around these rules. So thank you.
I will say to the group that at this point, until we have an ordinance in place, we've not been able to do any serious negotiations with Vista Sands. So as we sit here tonight, this group, this council, we can't tell you how many dollars might be generated for the city, because until we have an ordinance in place, Vista Sands isn't, they're not going to talk to us in any detail or any extent until they know that we have an ordinance that they can live with. So we haven't. I hear all this talk, Chris, about things are. You have inferred things have been done under the table, or things don't smell right or look right. I can tell you that there has been only very limited discussions with Vista Sands. We have not discussed anything nitty gritty yet.
I didn't say anybody's trading money or nothing, I just made mention that there's been meetings, and they've been involved with the meetings. My point to the ordinance was that the ordinance should safeguard the city, and it shouldn't be anything that would involve any one specific company.
I wasn't suggesting what you said tonight. I was suggesting some things that were in the paper earlier. And that's water over the dam.
I didn't write it.
You said it. You were quoted as saying it, let me say that. Maybe you didn't say
Have you
it.
ever quoted anything you didn't say,
I
John?
might have been.
Once, maybe?
Mr. Mayor,
I might
you
have been.
said to write an ordinance that Vista Mine could live with just less than 2 minutes ago. So I just wanted to point that out. You know, the fact that there has been meetings, that there has been, to even phrase it like they have something that they can live with. You didn't say something that people that Glenwood could live with. You said something that Vista Mine could live with. And that concerns us all. We just want to have a say.
Any of the council members wish to address this topic?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for your input and how you feel and what's going on and stuff. We're gonna do the best we can to represent everybody.
Cedar Corporation, Kevin, you have the floor.
don't care if you leave, you just can't talk. Yeah, no, I wasn't talking. I'm just standing here. Okay.
No, not at all. Pretty cool.
Good job.